2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Troy City Council. My name is William Lutz, President of Council, and I'm going slow so that all members can get settled in.
You had 20 seconds. Just let
We will
according to the atomic clock.
we'll begin tonight's proceedings with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Schilling. Please stand.
Since our current term began almost 2 years ago, City Council has heard an assortment of ideas and comments during the public discussion segment of our meetings. We have heard from area residents on current events, past and pending legislation, and ideas to be considered for future action by Council. Let us be thankful that the residents of Troy and the surrounding communities feel comfortable bringing their feelings and ideas to the attention of Council and the City of Troy. Each of us has the right to try and shape the future direction of the City of Troy, to voice our opinions and share our ideas. Let us pray that we never lose this right or desire. Unfortunately, Troy City Council has limited powers in what can and cannot be accomplished. We have witnessed a growing number of requests to ignore this regulation or that law or establish ordinance which conflict with the laws passed by the Ohio Legislature, the United States Congress, or the rulings of the United States Supreme Court. What is at issue is the perceived notion that a lower legislative body like Troy City Council has the right or ability to nullify a higher legislature's act or the rulings of the courts. The idea of nullification was first dealt with by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1809. Throughout our nation's history, the U.S. Supreme Court, using the powers given to them by the people through the U.S. Constitution, has declared all attempts at nullification unconstitutional. Our Civil War was fought in part over the southern states' belief that a state had the right to nullify federal law or Supreme Court rulings. In the 1950s, the beginning of the end of racial segregation was led by the Supreme Court's decisions declaring the various states' attempts at nullification of civil rights laws passed by Congress or prior Supreme Court rulings unconstitutional. If the theory of nullification was followed to its ultimate conclusion, each citizen would have the right to determine for themselves which laws were constitutional or unconstitutional, which laws they would obey and which they would not. Where would our country be if each one of us had this right? We would be a country with no laws. When we as members of Troy City Council were sworn in, we took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the state of Ohio and the United States of America. We are bound by this oath to follow the rule of law. Let us pray that this discredited idea of nullification never comes to fruition, and that efforts to change our city, state, and national laws and regulations be directed to the legislative, executive, or judicial body who created the laws, established the regulations, or ruled on the law in question, and who have the power to change the laws and regulations if deemed necessary or prudent. Let us pray that the members of Troy City Council and our other elected city officials strive to uphold their oath of office and follow the rule of law. Let us pray that the members of Troy City Council and our other elected city officials work to better the city of Troy and the lives of the citizens of Troy, using the powers given to them by the people of Ohio through the Ohio State Constitution. Let us pray that the issues that divide us be considered and addressed by those legislative, executive, and judicial bodies that have been given the power to do so by the people of this great nation. May the city of Troy and the United States of America continue to prosper and to be the best place in this world to live. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist?
Here.
Mr. Rozelle?
Here.
Mrs. C?
Here.
Mr. Whidden?
Here.
Mr. Swayzer?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Sievert?
Here.
Mr. Schilling?
Here.
Mr. Twilliger?
Move to
excuse Mr. Twilliger.
Second.
It's been
Beat you
moved
to it, Bobby.
excuse Mr. Terwilliger by Mr. Twist and seconded by Mr. Seaver. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger is excused.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read a summary of the minutes of the July 19th, 2021 meeting of Troy City Council?
Minutes of council, July 19, 2021. A presentation was made to the second quarter recipient of the Rumpke Recycling Award. Committee reports, Community and Economic Development Committee recommended that ordinance number 043, 2021 be adopted, which was an amendment to the general plan associated with the Troy Christian Schools Education and Performing Arts Facility. Streets and Sidewalks Committee recommended that legislation be prepared authorizing an application to the Ohio Public Works Commission for funding towards a portion of the West Main Street Corridor Phase 2 project. Law and Ordinance Committee reported regarding a liquor permit application. Resolution number R29, 2021, an application to Ohio Public Works Commission for funding was given first reading and was adopted. Ordinance number 043, 2021, amending the general plan, Troy Christian Schools Education and Performing Arts Center plan development was given third reading and adopted. Following various comments, council adjourned at 7:27 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. How's council wish to dispose of the minutes?
Move to accept.
Second.
It's been moved to adopt the minutes by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Rozell. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Minutes are accepted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Moving on to committee reports, we have two committee reports tonight. We'll begin with the Community Partnerships Committee and Mr. Rozell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On July 25th, this committee met to consider a request of the Pink Ribbon Girls that would require an agreement and notwithstanding language associated with the use of public property on October 8th, 2021 with, excuse me, with a stage and concert across West Main Street and including the sale of and consumption of alcoholic beverages within the defined area. The committee notes the event will be at no cost to the city. It is recommendation of the committee, legislation be prepared to authorize the Director of Public Safety Service to enter into the agreement with the Pink Ribbon Girls related to the event on public property on October 8th, and that the legislation include the standard non-withholding language for such events. This is respectfully submitted by John Schwazer, Jeffrey Whidden, and myself, William Rozell, as chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rozell. Are there any comments or questions on the report? Seeing none, we'll move to the final report for the evening from the Finance Committee and Mr. Schwazer.
Yes, sir. We have one report. This committee met on July 26th to review the city auditor's recommendation for authorizing bank depository agreements for the next 5-year period. This committee supports the recommendation of the city auditor and recommends that legislation be prepared to authorize bank depository agreements with U.S. Bank, Troy, First Financial Bank, Fifth Third Bank, Park National Bank, Minster Bank, and Greenville Federal. With the August 22nd expiration of the current agreements, the committee supports the legislation being presented as an emergency measure. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Phillips, Mr. Sievert, and myself as chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schwazer. Are there any comments or questions on this report? Moving on, we'll now open it up for comments on the agenda items. We have two ordinances, Ordinance 044, 2021 and Ordinance 045, 2021. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak on any of those items, you're welcome to come to the podium, give your name and address, and address council on those items. You have 2 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to our ordinances. Mrs. Mrs. Knight, will you please read ordinance 044, 2021?
Ordinance number 044, 2021. Ordinance authorizing the deposit of public funds of the City of Troy, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. This will take care of the 5-year depository agreements based on the recommendations of the city auditor. First reading.
Move to suspend.
Second.
It's been moved to suspend the 3 reading rule by Mr. Schweizer, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
The 3 reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the ordinance by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mrs. Snee. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the last ordinance for the evening, ordinance 045, 2021?
Ordinance number 045, 2021. Ordinance authorizing the use of public areas for a Pink Ribbon Girls event, notwithstanding conflicting provisions of the Troy codified ordinances, and further approving the use of an area for the sale of beer subject to the issuance of proper permits by the state of Ohio and procurement of liquor liability insurance, and authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to enter into agreement with Pink Ribbon Girls, Inc. Therefore, this is for an event that will take place on October 8, 2021. First reading.
Move for suspension.
Second.
It's been moved to suspend the 3 reading rule by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Schilling. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Move for adoption.
Second.
The 3 reading rule has been suspended. It's been moved to adopt the ordinance by Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Schweizer. Are there any final comments or questions? Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
No.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. That concludes our legislative items for the evening. We move on to communications and announcements. And Mrs. Knight, do we have any this evening?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Moving on to comments of officials, Mayor Oda.
I would just remind the community that we have a First Friday event by Troy Main Street Friday night, and that will involve nonprofits, a nonprofit game night. And then Saturday night, we have a concert at Treasure Island, Sounds of Motown with the group Touch, and that will be, there will be food trucks and things there for that.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Moving on, Director of Public Service and Safety, Mr. Titterington.
Just a couple of dates to keep in mind to announce, because they are coming up pretty quickly. September 6th is a Monday, that's Labor Day, and so the City Hall will be closed, but trash and recycling will not be delayed, normal schedule. The other one to start talking about, because we will start getting phone calls soon, as I was in a store just yesterday and saw all the costumes out. Halloween trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
You getting excited about that?
Comes earlier every year.
Yeah, well, it does. But the Miami County Council did vote earlier this year that trick-or-treating would be on Thursday before the 31st, on or before the 31st. This year, that is on October 28th, and so that will be Halloween, and that will be 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
And it'll be every year from now on,
Okay.
at least the next 5 years. Thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to Director of Law, Mr. Kerber.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerber. Our city auditor is not here. We'll move on to council members. Do any council members have any comments that they'd like to add at this time? Do any members of city staff in the audience have
We
any?
may have a comment. Hold on a
Oh,
second.
excuse me.
Okay. I'm going to say something then.
Mr. Seaver.
Basically, there's been some discussions among staff, the community. There's been people who have expressed concerns about the current crosswalks. And it's my understanding that, and Patrick can confirm this since no one else has indicated this, that we're going to have a review by the traffic engineer on that crosswalk. And I think that that's an important step for the city to do. And I just want confirmation from the city that that's happening.
That is going to happen.
Okay.
There's your
So
confirmation.
there's my confirmation.
When, do you have a date on that?
A date for
To
when
get his
they're gonna
report?
start?
When they're
Yeah,
start-
When it
look at
starts
it.
and when it's done, yes.
Do not have a timeframe on when it will be complete, because we're reaching out to them today, and so we need to figure out what exactly they need to do. What they will do is, so the report, the comprehensive report was done in 2017, complete with the recommendations, and so the changes were implemented in 2018. We're asking the traffic engineer that did the study from Wolpert to come back in 3 years later, update his factors, if there's any other new techniques, technologies, whatever, if in any way he's modifying his recommendations. But we haven't gotten confirmation from him yet, so I can't give you a date. We will ask for it as soon as possible, making sure that it's comprehensive and thorough. In the meantime, we will be removing the trellises and the vines, so the planters will be the 2-foot tall concrete and then just the ground cover on top of it.
Any other comments or questions from council? Any comments from city staff in the audience? We'll now open up for resident comments. Any resident can come to the podium and address council on any concern. Give your name and address and take as much time as you wish to consume.
Hi, my name is Ashley Lutz. I'm at 801 East Franklin Street in Troy. This is my first city council meeting, and as someone who is prone to get off track, I'm going to read this so that we're not here all night. William Lutz is my husband, and I would like to say that he has absolutely nothing to do with me being here tonight. Sorry. He has been very vocal in the past about our downtown crosswalks since the stoplights were removed several years ago. But truthfully, I didn't really understand the problem with the planters and the crosswalks. To me, they seemed like a non-issue as long as you were paying attention to the pedestrians and staying in your lane. However, my opinion of the current setup of our crosswalks downtown changed in a hurry last Tuesday evening around 6:30 p.m. when I nearly hit a pedestrian with my car. The traffic was heavy, as it tends to be, and I was approaching the roundabout from the south end near the Caroline. I was also looking for a parking place, and I had my 2 kids in the car with me. The red truck in front of me had gone through the crosswalk. My poor assumption was that obviously there wasn't anyone. They were in front of me. They went through. I was going extremely slowly, looking for other vehicles, and as I said, looking for a parking spot, and this woman, who was already in the middle of what I call the planter jungle, was completely camouflaged by the 5.5-foot vining plants. As I rolled through the crosswalk, I was going slowly. She appeared out of nowhere, rapped on my driver's side window, scared the pee out of me, and I was in shock. I nearly hit her. She was close enough to hit my window. If I hadn't been going slow, I could have killed her. I rolled down my passenger window And I told her that I was deeply sorry. I yelled to her that I was deeply sorry that I didn't see her at all. That experience really shook me up, and that is when I saw with my own eyes the problems that others have been trying to address for years. These concrete planters have to go. When I posted my experience on Facebook, the number of people I know who have either almost been hit by a car that didn't stop for them, almost hit someone who was crossing, or was scared to even walk downtown, period, was mind-blowing. One friend said her daughter knows someone who was actually struck by a car downtown in our roundabout area, and that she wasn't injured, so she didn't report it. My deep concern lies with small cars like mine that cannot see over or around these vining plants to know if pedestrians are in the crosswalk until they're already in the middle and it's possibly too late. Children under 5 feet tall, like my daughter, and shorter adults like my mom, who's 5'3", are also very unlikely to be seen if they are walking alone. My family and I walked downtown and took some pictures the other night. Mr. Lutz has those pictures and he can pass them around. I've shown them to other people as well, and I'm telling you, if you are in the right spot, in the lane, driving toward the crosswalk, you cannot see people who are under 5 foot tall. From the perspective of a vehicle in the driving lane, exactly, you can see in the pictures exactly how camouflaged pedestrians can be. My brother is a disabled Army veteran. He uses a motorized wheelchair. He told me that he was almost struck when he pulled out into the second lane of traffic after having been in the middle by none other than a Troy police officer. He said he cannot see over or around those planters. These planters are beautiful, there's no doubt about it. Our town is beautiful. However, the safety of all of our citizens, including those shorter than 5 feet and in wheelchairs, far outweighs the aesthetic of flowers. I would like the vines to be removed, as I thought I heard that they will be, from those planters immediately, and plans put in place for blinking pedestrian signs activated by a push button, such as those that we have on North Market Street by the school, to be installed at each crosswalk, and I would prefer that the cement planters be removed as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council this evening? Please come up, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish.
Hi, thank you so much for listening this evening. I fully appreciate it, and I'm so excited that children can be here as well. I think it's a phenomenal lesson for them to see as well. My name is Lisa Brown, and my address is 8564 East State Route 41, so we are east of town. As a member, I'm also, like Ms. Lutz, have some notes to read off of because I may get a little distracted. As a member of the Troy community, I love the feel of the downtown area with the restored storefronts, the artwork, the fauna, and of course, the people. I bring my 4 children and our dog downtown often to walk and shop. We ooh and ah at the window displays, the flowers, and always the lights on the trees when it's Christmas season. As a gardener, I wholeheartedly appreciate the landscaping of the downtown area. Of course, the fountain is always the centerpiece and gorgeous, but all the parts are beautiful. And as mentioned earlier, my concern that I bring this evening is about the beautiful planters that are located in the center of each crosswalk around the square. I believe the planters were meant for a protective barrier for pedestrians to wait in while traffic is moving between each direction of the street. However, the height and girth of the planters has become a security risk for my children and myself as a pedestrian and a driver. See, the height of the planters is above the heads of all of my children, ranging from age 6 up to 11. The planters are making it very difficult for my children to be clearly visible from oncoming drivers. In fact, the planters have created a perfect hiding spot. As a driver, I have seen adults be concealed by the planters as well. Just this past week, while stopped for a pedestrian crossing Route 41 on the east side of the fountain, I snapped a picture of an adult fully concealed by the planters. Again, rest assured, I was completely stopped. There were vehicles in front of me allowing her to cross. But I wanted to pass those pictures. For perspective, I drive a Suburban, 4 kids, so my perspective is slightly higher. And it just so happened, unplanned, this adult was carrying a flower arrangement, so she mixed in perfectly with the planters. I believe the cement planters were placed with security and safety in mind. However, I just feel we need to address this area. Perhaps initially, as mentioned, the beautiful vining black-eyed Susans could be removed to decrease the height, while a more extensive plan of action could be developed and reviewed. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to address council this evening? Please give your name and address and take as much time as you wish to consume.
Hi, my name's Marla Elliott, live at 20 South State Route 202 here in Troy. Unlike the rest of them, I have no notes. I just wanted to elaborate on what they've said. My father, who is 92, had knee surgery recently, and I was walking downtown with him in a wheelchair. And as we were crossing in the crosswalk, and we were just coming out of where the planters are, a car literally about mowed us down and scared the bejeebies out of us. And I agree with what they're saying. I think that the planters are, they just need to go. I don't even know if the height of the vining was the problem. I've watched people just barrel through those the crossings, and they're not even paying attention to whoever is walking across the street. They just don't pay attention. I don't even know if some people realize that they are supposed to stop. And I believe that the little flashing lights that are sitting down on the ground might be better if they were at eye level. I don't think people see them. I don't think that people see the flashing lights. And I do know that there's one of the lights, I'm mistaken, there's one of the lights has really bright flashing lights. The rest of them in the daytime, depending on what time of day it is, if the sun is shining just right, you can't even see them flashing. So I don't know if raising them up would help. I don't know, but thank you.
All right. Sure. Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council this evening? You're invited to come to the podium, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Hirschberger. I live at 2717 Southside Drive here in Troy, Ohio, which, by the way, on August 3rd is National Night Out. I'll be hosting a National Night Out on that day. Thank you guys for, I don't know if you help facilitate that or not, but it seems like the city of Troy is a part of that. And also wanted to let you all know that you're more than invited out to our place to have hot dogs. We're also going to have a giant slip and slide, so bring your suits. Should be a lot of fun. Or not, that's fine. Just wanted to know that it's out there. I would love to talk about ordinances on why we set out Halloween costumes way too early. However, I'm here to continue to talk about the ordinance to make Troy, Ohio a sanctuary city for the unborn. Last time we were here, a billboard was talked about outside the city of Lebanon. I have a picture of that billboard. I wish I could have, like the others, could have brought more to pass around, but this is from the ACLU.Ohio or ACLUOhio.org website. Wanted to talk about that. Sorry, I have notes too, and I just lost my place, so in order to not make it look like I lost my place, I'm just going to ramble for a second. The quote on the billboard is not actually, "We are here to sue Lebanon" or anything of that. What the billboard actually says is abortion is still legal in all of Ohio, with the all highlighted, as if to say killing unborn babies in Ohio is still legal in all of Ohio, the emphasis on all. And with all due respect to the ACLU, that is not an accurate statement. killing unborn babies may be legal here within the city of Troy, but it's not legal within the city of Lebanon, Ohio. So with all due respect to them, it's not exactly true. However, it should be noted that the billboard is more than just the city of Lebanon. This article here from ACLUohio.gov goes on to state that we hope this billboard, quote, "We hope this billboard will serve as a reminder the residents of Lebanon and South Lebanon," which is another village who is currently going through this process of making their village a sanctuary city, "and the people across the state," close quote. See, this billboard is for us in this room. The ACLU wants to continue the practice of killing black and brown babies before they are born. We teach, we touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but the numbers and history does not lie that Planned Parenthood specifically, but other abortion agencies, is here to eliminate the black community. I dare you to find numbers that go against that. You won't be able to do it. Whenever you hear the word abortion, it should be a dog whistle for eliminating the black community. But the ACLU wants to continue this practice of murdering unborn babies and doesn't want you, specifically in this room, to do your job, what you were elected to do. So you were elected to represent the city, the people of the city of Troy, as you well know. And as a resident of the city of Troy, thank you. People brought up their concerns, even this council meeting, and I looked around at you guys and you guys were taking their concerns seriously. So you take your job seriously of protecting the freedoms of those who you were elected to protect. Thank you for that. I'm asking you to go a step further and protect the freedoms of those who are pre-born. Make Troy a sanctuary city for the unborn. Just to be clear, as I say every single week, unborn children are human beings made in the image of God, and if children and humans, they deserve protection. It is a sin to murder human beings. Abortion is the premeditating killing of another human being with malice and forethought, which is murder. Legislation against murder protects the innocent. City Council has the right and the responsibility to protect the freedoms of the citizens of Troy. 33 other cities, as well as countless other cities and villages, are currently going through this process. Abortion is a shedding of innocent blood, and sadly specific targets the black and brown communities. The ACLU wants you to do their interests, not the interests of the people of the city of Troy. God hates the hands that shed innocent blood. However, there is grace and forgiveness and healing found in Jesus Christ. Make Troy a sanctuary city for the unborn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to?
I have a question.
Mr. Siebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate Ms. Harper's time, coming up all the time. I don't know, I guess I would like Grant's sort of given a quasi advice to us as to where things are going with this. I have my own personal strong beliefs that the Catholic is to where I think this should go. However, I also have to put personal opinions aside and say, what's the best for the taxpayers' money? We've had that argument brought before us again. So I just want to confirm that your position, Grant, is if we would undergo this, we are certain that we would buy ourselves litigation, which would go down at the expense of taxpayers having to protect us, or having to support that decision. Is that where we are?
Well, and it's not, I don't think it's just my opinion. It's established. I mean, the Supreme Court has weighed in on this, and there's been a lot of different litigation over the years. Roe versus Wade is perhaps the most famous, but then there was a case out of Pennsylvania entitled Casey in 1993, I believe, that talked about the regulations that can be imposed. If you have been following the news lately, I know that the state of Mississippi is involved in litigation, and they are specifically right now asking the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. And 23 different state attorney generals have also weighed in asking to seek that. Now, under the present state of the law, it is, I mean, you know, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, but the Supreme Court has already ruled on the constitutionality of that. And as of right now, you know, to enact legislation like the city of Lebanon, which would ban all all abortions, possession of abortion-inducing drugs, anything like that, it is really, it is in violation of established Supreme Court precedent. So, I mean, can I say that it's certain that somebody or some organization will sue the city of Troy? I cannot say that because it depends upon that organization. However, if the suggestion, you know, if Troy were ever to enforce it, I think, or ever to pass something like this, I think without question there would be a legal challenge that would result in litigation at the expense of Troy taxpayers. And I know that if the goal is to seek an overturning of Roe versus Wade, that's going to have to be at the Supreme Court level, and it's my understanding that it's already there, or it's going to be there in short order.
So just so we can get some closure to this, you're welcome to come every month, I guess. Having said with many clients who did not agree with my advice, I guess, but it is our advice, right? Is that, so I mean, in your opinion, should we wait for somebody else to rule on this, or do you have any, I mean, I understand we're just counsel, but do you have any thoughts on where we should go so we can make some sort of resolution?
To enact a Lebanon-style ordinance is contrary to established law at this point.
And what Mr. Schilling's quotes this afternoon earlier today are accurate under the law?
Well, generally, I mean, you know, I just heard it this evening. I haven't had an opportunity to parse it, but, you know, I am a history buff, and I'm certainly aware of efforts at nullification from the states and different political subdivisions, and certainly nothing Mr. Schilling said rubbed me historically the wrong way as to how that battle's been fought.
Thank you for your time. I just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page so we can.
If I may.
Mr. Phillips.
Also grant, number one, there are, I believe, and I'm not asking you to acknowledge this as fact or not, but I don't believe that there's any facility in town or in the entire county of Miami County to render this type of activity. So even if we did enact a rule, and this is the part I want you to answer about, if there was an ordinance that we did enact, number one, there would have to be an aggrieved person that would have to stand in as somebody that has standing or been affected by the law. And since we have no organization to provide that service, lack of a better word, it's really a moot point. Am I kind of on a...
Yes, and there are some constitutional rights that you don't, it doesn't require like particular standing. The easiest example I could give would be like in the free speech context, if if the city council would pass an ordinance saying nobody can speak on behalf of or in support of the president or in support of Democrats or Republicans or something like that, that's generally called a prior restraint. In that area of the law, you don't have to show that you were charged with a crime in order to challenge it. So there are certain constitutional rights that have a lesser standing requirement that you wouldn't have to necessarily, you could just say that, maybe I do want to exercise this constitutional right in the future, and that would be okay under certain, it's a little more detailed. I don't want to go too deep in the woods, but I suspect that an organization, an advocacy organization would have the ability to challenge it even if that activity wasn't occurring in the city. I would suspect that. I haven't examined that to a great level of detail to, say with total certainty, but I think that, when you try to be predictive sometimes, I can say with if I was looking in the crystal ball, there'd be a high level of certainty that there would be a challenge.
Thank you.
Sir, come on up. Please give your name and address and take as much time as you wish to consume.
Thank you very much. My name is Dave Enneking, 5045 Washington Bend Court, Troy. I'm also president of Miami County Right to Life that has our help center at 305 East Main Street. I'd like to give some additional input of information that I have. The ACLU just withdrew their lawsuit against 7 sanctuary cities in Texas. Their sanctuary cities, their ordinances specified the Lilith Fund and the TE, Texas Equal Access Fund. Those entities funded abortions, and all they had to do was withdraw the names of those 2 entities, and the ACLU withdrew their lawsuit against 7 cities. That's just one fact I wanted to pass along. A couple other facts. Abortion's been performed in Ohio in 2019, is the latest numbers I have, was 20,102 young human lives snuffed out. Abortions on persons from Miami County. In 2011, it was 120. In 2019, 72. Currently, just from Troy, 2011, 40. 2019 was 34. That's 3 young lives per month. And I compare that to the murder rate in Dayton. In 2019 was 4 per month. So the murders of innocent children from Miami County is almost as bad as the murder rate for homicides in Dayton. And when you compare the population, it's really percentage-wise a lot more. Those are some of the facts that I had for there. At Miami County Right to Life, we've been trying to inform people about other options, such as adoption. We provide that to ladies. We advise them on that. We help them in financial situations because most of them get into that situation because they don't know what to do. And they feel themselves in a position where they want to make a quick fix. And later on, they suffer mentally because they know what they did was wrong. How many of you have read the ordinance from Lebanon? Okay, just for everybody's opinion, I'd like to go through a couple things on that. In the beginning, they specify some things, that there are no facilities within the city of Lebanon, like you were mentioning, there's none in Troy. If a woman would decide she wants to have an abortion, there are several options within a reasonable distance of Lebanon. And that one would be the Stroop Mill Abortion Clinic in Kettering, Ohio. So it is not a substantial burden to the exercise of the right under the Supreme Court's ruling in Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey. So it's not an undue burden to say, well, you can't have them here, but you can go to Dayton. The next is the total number of pages on that was 12 pages that are in this ordinance. The beginnings, their findings, human life to them begins at conception. Human life. It's not a dog, it's not a cat, it's a human life. They also go into explaining the heartbeat bill, which has been passed in Ohio. Currently, it is temporarily adjourned for the enforcement. It has not been declared unconstitutional or illegal. It's just put on hold for right now. So anything that abortions happen after the heartbeat, within 6 years, they can still go back and prosecute once this adjournment is stopped. You mentioned the Mississippi case that's at the Supreme Court. They decided to hear that. They will probably be deciding it in the middle of 2022, that we will hear what they say. The Roe v. Wade, when Roe v. Wade passed, it was based on privacy. It wasn't based on the right of a woman to have an abortion. It was based on privacy. But one thing they said was that the states could regulate it after the third trimester, or after the first trimester. So after the first 3 months, states could regulate it. Well, that's 90 days. Now they've changed it. Some of the laws, a lot of the laws have restricted it for 20 weeks because of viability. They say, well, maybe it's going to survive after viability. The only thing that makes a difference for viability is if a baby has food and shelter and taken care of, it can survive, it's viable. And that's inside a mother's belly. It just pops out. You know, medicine has allowed it to come earlier and earlier. The next number of pages are their declarations of different things. But the amendment to the city code is what they are saying it is unlawful for any person to procure or perform an abortion of any type at any stage of pregnancy in the city of Lebanon. This section does not prohibit referring a patient to an abortion which takes place outside the city limits of Lebanon. What it does go against is knowingly providing transportation to or from an abortion provider, giving instructions over the telephone or the internet like they want to do, Planned Parenthood, providing money with the knowledge that it will be used to pay for the abortion, providing abortion doula services, or coercing a pregnant mother to have an abortion against her will. It shall be an affirmative defense of the unlawful act in these sections if the abortion was in response to a life-threatening physical condition aggravated by, caused by, or arising from a pregnancy that a certified physician places woman in danger of death or serious risk of substantial impairment or major bodily function unless an abortion is performed. So if the woman is really at risk, like an ectopic pregnancy, and somebody has to provide that, a doctor to save their lives, then it's not going to be prosecuted. Got a couple other spots I just want. Under no circumstance may the mother of the unborn child that has been aborted or the pregnant woman who seeks to abort her unborn child be subject to prosecution or penalty under this section. So the woman is not liable under this ordinance. There's a lot of other stuff in the next 6 pages. And it all follows this one clause here. Every provision, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, word, or section, and every application of the provisions in this section are severable from each other. Basically, it means if somebody would present a case and say, well, this part isn't legal, that part can be eliminated, and the law does not have to be changed, or the ordinance would not have to be changed. Just that one part would be dropped. I'm proud of the city of Troy, and I'm proud of what you guys do making hard decisions, because you are here to make our Troy a better place to live and safe for all of us. You know, there's laws, you're talking about now, the sidewalks crossing, you're making it a better place to live. Years ago, I remember the strip joint near I-75 that snuck in, and Troy made sure it left. Ordinances are laws, but you also have zoning laws, a lot of other ways maybe to make yourself a sanctuary city. You're making it a safe place for the unborn. So I hope that just saying, oh, well, we're afraid of a lawsuit, maybe examining how to put one together, asking for somebody. I do have a lawyer who would be willing to write a potential one for Troy, if you would be interested, that he would do that at no charge. I know a lot of times Troy spends $17,000, $18,000 on a study to see what works. I don't know how much was spent on when we changed the laws for the circle, from the person being inside the circle having the right of way or outside the circle coming in having the right of way. But you guys have spent money to investigate. So this is a worthwhile cause, I think, to investigate. I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council this evening? You are invited to come forward and give your name and address and take as much time as you wish. I did have one question for Mr. Titterington, referring back to the sidewalk concerns that were brought by residents earlier. I believe you said that we will refer back to the former company that did the study in 2017 to review their findings and do a new one? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were the trellises part of the recommendations
No, the trellises were a design, well, no. That was part of the annual floral arrangements that the Beautification Commission recommends to the Park Board, and the Park Board approves every year. They give a layout of the types of flowers, the colors of the flowers, and the trellises were part of that. Okay. It's something we can correct very easily and make sure that we don't do that.
So just for clarification, the traffic engineer didn't say put trellises in the planters?
I am 99.9% sure. I do not remember the word trellises coming
because
up.
it would make no sense to bring this traffic engineer back if they made that kind of recommendation.
That was not part of the recommendation.
Okay.
Because we did spend thousands of dollars on a traffic study. I have a couple of things I'd like to say.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm not sure how we fix driver or pedestrian attention. It is not the flower pots causing the problem. It is driver and pedestrian inattention. Removing the flower pots simply puts the pedestrian out in the middle of the street. Part of having a roundabout, you are supposed to provide a halfway point for pedestrians. With the flower pots, that is what we have done. We cannot put concrete ledges there because of plowing. All kinds of things have been discussed. So the flower pots kind of were, let's try this, let's see how this works. We have gotten so much fewer complaints. People used to complain all the time about people running red lights, people turning right on red. We have not had an incident where a pedestrian was struck in the circle since 2016. We had traffic lights at that point. I'm not sure. We will look at the study again, and we will go through it with the traffic engineer again. But the Federal Transportation Board is pushing roundabouts. ODOT is pushing roundabouts, and they have standards for roundabouts. We are supposed to provide a halfway point for the pedestrian. I'm not sure how we fix driver and pedestrian inattention. A driver has 2 points where they are supposed to yield. You are to yield to the pedestrian, and you are to yield to the traffic in the circle. So before you get to the circle, you are yielding 2 times. Pedestrians have a responsibility to also watch the traffic. They have a responsibility to make eye contact with the driver. Removing the flower pots does not fix driver and pedestrian inattention.
Can I
Mr.
have a
Rosa.
question. I'm not pro, anti-flower pot anyway, but you say they have regulations for roundabouts? Is it based on size? Otherwise, my other question
Not
is,
necessarily.
then what's our halfway point at Dorset, McKeag?
There's concrete.
Well, they have concrete at
Wedge,
McKeag
is
and
that
Dorset. There are a
halfway?
variety of reasons why concrete islands we don't think will work. It's part
I
of the
mean,
review that they will
that's
do.
the halfway point in Ridge? That's all I need to know, if that's what it is.
No, if you look at the islands out at McKeag and Dorset, there are cutouts in those islands where the
Okay.
crosswalks are.
Okay.
And they are within a certain distance, and there is there's a standard that they use when they design those.
Fair enough.
We will be, we're just going to ask them, here's what you said in 2017, which is when he issued the report, because then we implemented the changes along with the diet in 2018. We'll ask him to review what he's wrote, and if he still feels that's the best approach 3 years later, and if there's anything new that we could look at, the flower pots do serve a purpose. The trellises do create, the pictures show that they can. It has to do with angle, light, attention, awareness, whatever, you name it. But certainly going up 5 feet in the air, something we didn't anticipate being a problem. I will note that traffic engineers do like to see some kind of a visual break. Otherwise, driving habit, it's human nature. You tend to just look too far forward. And in our case, if you really look at a clear day, you can see all the way to the light at Staunton and Market. And so you could be looking at the high school and the Board of Education area. So having that breaking point is important. I've verified with our park superintendent, tomorrow morning, they will be taking the trellises and the vines out. So we will be back down to 2.5 feet, 3, whatever, because the concrete only goes up 2 feet up in the air. So we'll deal with the immediate issue and then have the traffic engineer come back and do a
As
review.
part of that break in the horizon, we are being asked to put something at McKeag because there's nothing in the center to break up the horizon. We've been asked to take a look at that.
And that will be in the center of the,
Another fountain?
no, it will not be a fountain. It will not be a fountain.
Do some reading on roundabouts.
Mr. Schilling.
Mr. Carrington, is it a possibility that we as a council could consider temporary measures before this report could take months to get back? Is there anything that can council take a look at, maybe referring this, can we refer this to an appropriate committee to take a look at temporary measures that could be implemented in the meantime to further protect our pedestrians around the square?
I would not advise that because, no disrespect, but none of us are experts, and we're dealing with traffic laws and movements, and that's why we pay traffic engineers to do this correctly. There are federal guidelines, there's state guidelines, there's standards, there are written publications on how to do all of these things. Certainly, Mr. Kerber can weigh in on that from a legal standpoint. I would not advise, I wouldn't know what to recommend to you. and anything that we do would just be an experiment, and I would not advise experiments on 2 state highways.
So our city engineer wouldn't be qualified to give us any advice on this?
She would, she's here, but she's
Can I ask
one that
another-
wants to go to the traffic engineer as well.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Did any of the transportation regulations dealing with roundabouts, did they make a recommendation to put trellises in those pots? I mean, obviously, we've got no problem not doing things that aren't regulation, right?
I mean,
No, that's-
I'm just going to interrupt. I think I'm going to answer this that hasn't been approved or disapproved by administration, but the Beautification Committee and the Park Board were kind of left and ran amok. So this wasn't something that was absolutely run up the flagpole and okayed by the administration or anybody like that. So it's one of those accidents that happened. So I don't think that there's any blame, but it's going to be corrected. As the chairman of the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, I have to tell you that conversations along this line have been going on for quite a while in trying to get more study done or a study done, and we finally got confirmation that that is going to occur. So it's something that has been addressed by me from my committee chairperson standpoint. But as Mr. Titterington says, there's nothing for us, a non-professional group as a committee, to make any recommendations or do things, because we're not going to know the laws that and the guidelines that these things are designed for. At the moment, just with the planter boxes or the planters, things are of a legal standard. So we don't want to take away from anything that could potentially leave us open to liability between now and when the study comes back.
Okay. Any other comments? Last call for resident comments. Our meeting stands adjourned. Our next meeting will be August 16th, 2021 here in Council Chamber.